Well, again, thank you for inviting me down here. Really, one of the first things I wanted to say is, thank you for being involved. I think one of the things that I'm encouraged by as I, travel the state is so many people come up to me and say, I never even thought about getting involved in politics until right now, which is, exactly my same story, quite honestly. I am seeing a very strong, very high-level concern about the direction of this country is moving in, quite honestly. I realize I just received the endorsement from the Republican Party. I will say I was as surprised as anybody about that. We certainly weren't expecting that. But I do want to say that I view that more as an endorsement of my message. And one thing I have been relatively successful about, just to give you a little feel in terms of how I even got involved in this, is I was asked back in October of 2009, there was a couple that wanted to put on a Tea Party event in Oshkosh. I just got asked, would you be willing to speak at the Tea Party? And what they really wanted me to talk about was, regulation, government regulation on business. And I said, no, I'd be happy to speak, but I really don't want to talk about that. This was during the whole healthcare debate, and I was starting to hear an awful lot of complaints about doctors and about doctors making too much money. And so what I really want to talk about is I want to defend the producers of America. And that's really what that first Tea Party speech was about. And so I gave a Tea Party speech, and then shortly after that, people were coming up to me off the street and just saying, hey, loved your speech, just something like you ought to run. And the next thing that happened is they passed the health care bill. And from my standpoint, the health care bill is the greatest assault on our freedom in my lifetime. I'll get back to exactly why that is, because I realize you guys don't really know who I am, so let me just quick fill you in on just a quick background. I moved to Oshkosh in 1979. I chose to live in Wisconsin. And moved there to start a business called Packer. We extrude a plastic sheet that's used in medical device packaging and actually some printing applications. It's a specialty enough product that we're a manufacturer only in Wisconsin, but we export around the world, and actually one of our largest export markets is China. My background is in accounting. Okay, I think we are facing huge fiscal crisis here. Okay, huge fiscal problems. I think that kind of perspective, a private sector perspective, with an accounting background, will serve me well, when I go to Washington. From the standpoint of family life, I've been married to the same gal, my wife Jane, for 32 years. We've raised 3 children. All 3 went to the University of Madison. They all turned out conservative. which is always an applause line, so I always have to throw that in there. But now I want to get back to healthcare, because I bring my family into it because I have a special story to tell. I have a special motivation in terms of why healthcare affected me so dramatically that I actually decided to throw myself in the political arena here. My first child was born with a very serious congenital heart defect. It required an immediate procedure the first day of her life down in Milwaukee Children's, where they saved her life. And then 8 months later, she had to have the upper chamber of her heart totally reconstructed. Now, what I had to do, because when you have a very serious health condition, there's different levels of advancement in terms of the technique to take care of that. And I had to call around the country because I knew that the particular technique they had in Milwaukee was just a little bit behind it elsewhere. They were going to rebaffle the upper chamber of the heart using background, when the heart's the size of a plum. And I called around. I found at the University of Minnesota, which is actually where my family was from, there's a preeminent pediatric cardiologist, and they were rebaffling the upper chamber of the heart with pericardial tissue, so it would grow with the heart. So, the good news story, and I won't get into any more detail, but my daughter now is 27 years old, and she's a nurse herself in a neonatal intensive care unit. She's taking care of little babies. She was inspired by her doctors, and she knew she could be inspiration to other parents like my wife and I. So when they passed Obamacare, I had a very personal experience in terms of how vital it is that we maintain the freedom to be able to go out and seek the best medical treatment, not just get slotted into a ration type of care system. So I found that very offensive from that standpoint. I'm a business person. I understand the power of the marketplace. We need to realize that America is the engine, the absolute engine for medical development. This is where we develop medical techniques. This is where we develop medical devices. It's where we develop life-saving drugs. I just think that the health care bill is just absolutely designed to move us to a single-payer system And that's not a mystery. That's not a theory what happens with a single-payer system. We will have ration care. We will have lower quality care. It's the only way to control costs. Okay, so that was the freedom aspect of the health care bill. There's a fiscal element to that as well. I've been watching for the last year and a half as we have just been spending ourselves into oblivion. Bottom line. I mean, it is just unsustainable. I mean, I remember when I used to be outraged at $200 billion a year deficits. We're at $1.5 trillion. When they passed Medicare, they estimated out 25 years in advance. They said Medicare was going to cost $12 billion in 1990. It ended up costing $111 billion, 10 times the estimated cost. I think the health care reform bill will be the exact same way. So we're going to take a new entitlement. We're going to take over 1/6 of our economy, and really it's a healthcare system. It's not perfect, but it's the finest healthcare system in the world. And we're going to put on that an entitlement that is going to bust an already incredibly broken budget. Okay? One thing that John McCain was absolutely right about is we are committing intergenerational theft. And I think that is wrong. I think it's immoral. I think that has to stop. So the freedom aspect of the health care bill combined with the fiscal irresponsibility of it certainly drove me to decide to start talking to people about whether somebody like me ought to run for the U.S. Senate. But I want to put it in an even larger context. I'm 55 years old. I believe I grew up in an America that used to value hard work, used to celebrate success. And over my lifetime, I've just seen us slowly but surely drift toward a culture of greater entitlement and dependency. And that's an America that I wasn't certainly not used to. I think I have a pretty good sense, over the span of human history. I mean, this 234-year-old experiment that we call America, I think that is incredibly precious. I mean, it is exceptional, and I see it being squandered. And I just find that outrageous. So I would say that is the overriding reason why I decided to hop in the Senate race. If I am fortunate enough to be your senator from Wisconsin, when I go to Washington, I will take with me a very deep reverence for the genius of our founding fathers. I mean, what they gave us here, I think it needs to be nurtured. And let's face it, there's a reason that America, we hold 5% of the world's population, but we produce 25% of the world's goods. And again, that's because of freedom. It's because of the free market system. It works. I have no idea why anybody would want to move us toward a European-style socialism type of state. Okay, I have no idea why they'd want to do that. So the main theme of my campaign would be freedom. The main goal is I really have two top priorities. Repeal the health care bill and actually start tackling the unsustainable nature of the spending and debt. Now, it is a huge, huge task. I mean, truthfully, one of the questions I asked myself before I decided to do this was, can I make any difference? I mean, is it already too late? And I have to admit that the conclusion I came to is, I'm not willing to give up America. I'm just simply not willing to give up on it. So I decided to hop in the race. And I think that's kind of long and short of it, and I'm happy to take your questions.